I call to order the regular Board of Directors meeting for the Elephant Butte Irrigation District for Wednesday, April the 8th, 2026. Morning, everyone. Director Garai, can you please give the invitation?
Sure. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. Send your guidance upon all of us here to make the correct decisions for our district. We pray for rain. We need it desperately. Guide us and help us to make it through this drought. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Smith, will you please lead the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Introduction to guests. Good morning, Dr. Shiva Dance. Ms. Crawford, will you please read off attendees online?
Absolutely. Today online, we have AJ Carlson from EBID. We have PK Colquitt from EBID. We have Delise Maciel from EBID. We have Leah Diaz, EBID. We have Dr. Phil King, Sky DeVore is joining us, and Scott Gamboa from EBID is here as well.
Very good, thank you. Next item on the agenda is public input. Dr. Shigadance, would you like to add anything?
No, I'll just appreciate you having an opportunity to let people speak.
Thank you.
There are no complaints.
Is there anybody online that would like to give public input? Okay. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there any objection to the agenda as written?
Move to present to pass the agenda as presented.
I believe we don't need a motion, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, then without any opposition, the agenda is approved. Approval of board minutes. Does anybody have any comments on the board minutes?
I move to approve the board minutes of March 11th, 2026.
I have a motion by Director Garai to approve the board minutes for March 11th, 2026. Second by Director Chris. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. Any of the presidents, the ayes have it, and the board minutes are. The next item on the agenda is a committee report from the Land Use Committee. Director Colquitt.
Yes, since I'm here on virtually, I'd like to pass it off to David Lutz, but he'll go into further discussion about our meeting via gas that was held virtually. Well, I'm going to let David take over.
Very good. Thank you, Director Colquitt. Mr. Lutz.
Thank you, Mr. President. We did have a meeting of the Land Use Committee virtually with representatives of Zia Gas, Treasurer Manager Smith, Mr. Franzoy, and a number of other EBID personnel were there. It was largely introductory, just seeing where we were at from the prior negotiations. I think the main thing to state just generally is that Zia Gas is still very interested in entering into that blanket agreement. We are working on our various stakeholders to present a proposal. They have some projects that they indicated are going to keep them pretty busy until around the May timeframe. But we are going to follow up and expect to have that agreement complete in the coming months.
Any questions from the board? Mr. President, Mr. Dowdy.
Mr. Lutz, in the past, the blanket agreement has charged fees to Zia Natural Gas based on the amount of gas that came through the region, as opposed to per crossing. In general, I think that makes sense. Are we moving? Is the intention to move away from that to a different form? What was there anything expressed by Zia Natural Gas about how they want to approach compensating the members of our district for the use of their facilities.
In the meeting that we had, we didn't get to those levels of specifics. What we have right now is Mr. Franzoy has been working on a pricing structure that is related to the gas. That there are some reviews of the crossings that Mr. Gamboa is working on to try to determine what the actual level of crossings are. But in direct answer to your question, that's still up in the air, but currently our proposal is to continue to do it by the level of gas. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so to chime in here, they don't have an accurate mapping of all of their crossings either. And so it's easier to go per decatherm. I did a with and without method. Here is the cost with the blanket agreement in place. And here is it without it. Then you take the present value of that, discount it back, and that's the value of the contract. And so utilizing that method shows us what they should pay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Leach. Thank you, Mr. Franzoy. Mr. President, Manager Smith. I think that covers the members of our district and being compensated. I'm concerned about the life safety of our maintainers if we don't know where natural gas lines. I'm not sure how to resolve that. I just want to note it for the record. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Director Doggy. Any further comment? That, we will move on to the Water Resources Report, Dr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me get situated. Okay, y'all seeing my screen okay?
Comment.
Doesn't look like it yet.
There
There we go. Okay, interesting times we're in. This is what we've got in storage right now. About 250,000 in Elephant Butte and 16 in Caballo. This is an increase of only 6,700 acre feet since last month's report, which is kind of indicative of where we are. That's a total of 266,000. Again, these numbers, the Rio Grande Compact credit, that's kind of a placeholder number. I'm surprised we don't have a better one yet because the Compact Commission meeting is nigh upon us, but that's still the last estimate I heard from Reclamation. And San Juan Chama water, that's a old value too, but I don't think it has changed all that much. So we've got usable project storage of about 252,000. 18 of that is not releasable for the minimum pools in Elephant Butte, and we haven't released any yet. So we've got about 234,000 acre feet of seasonal supply. The net inflow has just about flatlined at this point. I would say 25 acre feet per day. That's about 12.5 CFS. Is not significantly different from zero net inflow. And again, net inflow is the release plus change in storage. There is no release, so that's just a change in storage at this point. And 25 acre feet per day is pretty close to nothing. Looking at the hydrograph of the reservoir, you can see the red line there, that's the storage. It flatlines up there right at about 250,000. It's been there for several days now. And the inflow, what I've done here is the inflow itself is quite volatile. It's subject to large daily errors, but they cancel out over fairly short periods of time. So the 3-day moving average is what you see in the dark purple. And we're getting down here, you see we're cruising right along the zero line. Got a little uptick here at the end, but don't worry, that'll come right back down. So that's where we stand on storage. And I don't, as we will see when we get into the forecast, not a lot of relief coming down with the spring runoff at this point. This is the river channel at San Marcial. Keep in mind that parallel to this is the low flow conveyance channel, which at this point is spilling out into through the breach in the low flow conveyance channel and meandering its way down through the bosque there to the reservoir. But the river channel itself has been at zero for some time now, and that's why you see so little flow. A couple of gauges upstream of San Marcial at uh, um, Highway 380 is also at zero. So the river has started drying up from San Marcial going north already, and it's only April. It started in March, which is very early for that kind of drying. What can I say about the snowpack? That's what the Western United States is looking like right now. We're in new territory. As you see, our snowpack is down here 13, 14% of average in the headwaters. Pardon me. I actually caught a cold via a Teams call from James. You didn't know that was possible, did you?
My
The
goodness,
total,
thanks a lot.
yeah, the total precip, is not as bad as as the snowpack clearly, but it's pretty bad as well. Looking, this is where I say we're in uncharted territory. The the colors you see here on this graph at the top is the maximum for each day for the period 1991 through 2020. The red line down here at the bottom is the lowest it's been each day. The black line is this year. And you see that we really are charting new territory at this point. We're the lowest it's ever been at this time of year. These are basin-wide summaries for the headwaters and for the upper Rio Grande. Both are in lower than they've been in the 30-year baseline by a good long ways. This is generally distributed in the headwaters as a little more snow on the west side in the San Juan Mountains and pretty much no snow on the east side in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. And it all averages out to one pretty dismal outlook. There's not a lot of snow left, and what's there probably won't make it to Elephant Butte. On the season, yes.
Would you go back to the previous slide, please? This is Greg Davier. The second red line that's on that graph, is that last year?
That's 2018. I picked 2018 because it was one that kind of cruised along the minimum line. This is significantly worse than 2018. So thank you for bringing that up. I forgot to mention that. That's 2018. Last year was better than what we're seeing now, and it wasn't very good. So in terms of the seasonal drought outlook, the entire state, the entire Rio Grande watershed is in drought or a few spots drought development likely. We've seen where this is headed for several months now, and nothing is bucking the trend. Notice that almost the entire Western United States is either in current drought or expected to be there shortly. The monthly precipitation, certainly in the headwaters, this is for the month of April, is below normal on the precipitation, above normal on the temperature. That's kind of the reason I think that what little snowpack is left up there, we're not going to see it in the river, certainly by the time it gets down to Elephant Butte. And if you thought I didn't have any good news at all, I do. looking forward to our monsoon season, July through September. It actually kind of starts up second half of June and runs into October, but the thick part of the monsoon season is July through September. We're actually forecasted to have above average precipitation during that period and also above average temperature, but let's focus on the positive here, which is above average precipitation. What this probably means is we can expect a monsoon to kick in as we are winding down our season, which is going to make James's job that much more difficult, because if he is trying to get people watered out and they get an inch and a half of rain on their field, you're going to have canceling orders. There may not be enough season left to get around again. So it'll be a bit of precipitation, which is great. Hopefully we get some coming into the reservoir. And hopefully it will persist after the season is over so that we can get out there and pick up some stormwater directly from the river. It, if we do get monsoonal events after shutdown.
Dr. King, what's driving the increased chances of above average monsoon?
I'm glad you asked. The usual suspect. We are currently in La Nina. We are still favored to go into neutral conditions pretty quickly here and stay in neutral conditions May through July. And then El Nino conditions will basically come up in starting, during our monsoon season. We're expected to see El Nino conditions form, but one of the conditions for El Nino is that it has to persist. So it may be El Nino conditions, but requires persistence for it to be officially declared El Nino. You can see this starting to form up over here in this graph. It goes from a year ago at the top to the present down at the bottom. And this is from the Western Pacific over to the coast of South America here. You see that we had all this cool water throughout the Eastern Pacific, and we're getting this little warming starting up down here in the far Eastern Pacific off the coast of South America. That's what is hopefully going to generate El Nino conditions in the coming months.
So it was my understanding that El Nino usually means more shearing winds going over the Atlantic, and these are hurricane season. So are we getting the majority of this increase in precipitation, is the majority of it coming from storms that are coming from the Pacific, from the south? Because I thought that we usually get our moisture from the Atlantic during the monsoon season and not so much from the south.
Oh no, our monsoonal system comes off the Pacific. You'll see the storms just lining up in a good monsoon season. The storms just line up there in the Pacific and going. We do get significant precipitation coming up off the Gulf in some years for sure, and that's when we get things like hurricane remnants that are some of the biggest storms we get. But for example, 2006, the flooding that we got that year, that came off the Pacific. 2008 was coming out of the Gulf.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Okay, and this is kind of indicative of where we stand. This is the worst forecast I have ever seen, and it is for April 1st. Because we are now into the spring runoff period, the forecast is for April through July rather than March through July. So you see the medians are a little different. That's because we're into it already. But notice that all of the estimates for San Marcial are negative up to the 10% exceedance probability. So we've got a 10% chance of getting 30% of median April through July runoff. Otherwise, we're not getting anything. And that seems to be where it's showing up. If we do get anything, it's probably going to be due to an early onset monsoon. And I don't know that the forecast explicitly include that. But even Otoe, 14% for the 50% exceedance probability, they've got a 50% chance of getting 14% of average or better. It's going to be a low year. I mean, from the upstate New Mexico perspective, they can't fall all that far behind because there isn't enough water, which is kind of it's a bad situation to be in terms of water supply, but in terms of compact, they can't swing too far negative this year. And in summary, as I've been saying for probably 6-8 months now, it's a critically short supply year. We're essentially inflow is ceased. And by the way, I do expect it to go negative. The way net inflow goes negative is the losses in the reservoir exceed anything coming in. And the losses would be primarily evaporation at this point. Again, that April through July runoff is it's the worst I've ever seen. I've been watching these for a while. I think that 4-inch allotment is very, very likely final. We're still planning for that May 29th release. And let's, if you want something to look forward to that monsoon. And with that, I would invite any questions.
Thank you, Dr. King. Questions from the board? Mr. Director Sloan.
Yeah, Dr. King, what's EP1's allotment gonna look like this year?
It will definitely be significantly reduced. I don't believe they have made an allotment yet. Let me think. No, they weren't even very anxious to get the allocation going. I was kind of wanting to get the allocation out a bit early this year because we want to do a dry run here for the implementation of the index. But James, have you heard anything about an allotment down there?
No, I've heard just pretty much what you have in these meetings we've had. He's waiting till the last minute, which is unusual for them. I think
Yeah.
they're grasping with having to deal with a shortage they haven't had to kind of match us in a long time. So
Yeah, they're gonna have some growers meetings going too. So I would assume they'll have their allotment by then, but it will be significantly reduced, and they'll probably run 3 to 6 weeks longer than we do.
Director Wright. Director Ludwig.
Yes, I know they're having a board meeting this morning.
Yeah.
And this afternoon they have a Zoom growers meeting. So that could probably be announced.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay, you're right.
Thank you, Director Ludwig. Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Dr. King.
Thank you.
Mr. Narvaez. You have anything to add today?
good morning, everybody. I'm in my office, but I have too much sickness flying around. I don't know if I'm contagious anymore or not because my grandkids now, 2 of my other ones now have strep throats. So it's like, I don't know if I got to bomb my house or what, but anyway, I just wanted to join in real quick and I believe Maryland sent or has you guys made you guys a copy of a handout. We're going to be sending an email. Does everyone have that in front of them?
Yes.
Great. This was based off of the last meeting. What we didn't discuss in the last meeting was the actual flat rate, and I didn't put that in there because we didn't really have an idea what was gonna go on with EP number one, but we're already at the point where I'm recommending that the flat rate weekend be the June 13th and 14th. It's, I know I'd like to try to get it in the first week, but being the river's gonna be extremely low, it's gonna put us in a bad situation, especially if we have a delayed diversion. And we'll be trying to flush when we're trying to deliver, and it'll just be a mess. So, as far as the best weekend, I've put on the handout there, June 13th and 14th. Um, it's the best place we can put it to really get water out there. We can surely knock out early demand in the first run, and then just kind of attack that flat rate weekend that following weekend after we get going and everything's kind of primed. That's really the only changes that we didn't discuss on the last one. We did discuss the allotment being 4 inches, so we are alerting. We will alert the farmers unless there's any changes after today. But I plan on sending out the mass email at the conclusion of the board meeting. I just wanted to make sure you guys all took a look at this and we're okay with that. It has other announcements on there as far as the growers meetings are concerned, and there we'll be providing more information outside of the irrigation season. We'll try to emphasize in those meetings also the importance of the getting water out fast and furious, like we try to say. And considering that we may have this monsoon late in the season, we'll have to strategize that as we get closer. But it may be a good problem to have, or it may mess things up, like Dr. King said. So we just have to take a look at it. But we'll try to put together as much information as we can to, um, alert the farmer of what we're facing, and that we have done it before a couple times. We have a plan going into it, and that's kind of what we'll stick to, um, and go from there. But I just wanted to show you that the announcement that we have. And if you guys are okay with that, I'd like to go ahead and send that mass email out so we can start getting notification out there and go from there. But with that, I don't have anything else unless there's any questions for me.
Thank you, Mr. Director Colquitt.
Good morning. How we doing?
I'm trying to do good, Senor. Thank you.
Good, good. Well, hey, what does flushing entail?
Well, all the areas that we were not able to burn and to get rid of the weeds that have accumulated over this windy season, which is just going to start picking up, unfortunately. We try to stay on top of it throughout the winter so that it's not so bad, but with winds expected to come in, they tend to fill everything up, mostly with tumbleweeds and those kind of things. So the flushing usually entails getting those waters out. I mean, those tumbleweeds and other accumulated trash out of the way immediately so that we can prime the canal. Some places are worse than others, and some places the flushing is really quick. But that's usually what it entails.
And how long does it generally run? Flushing.
It could be a couple days, and with this being a short season, we'll take more of a push through approach instead of just kind of waiting to fill up a certain lateral and kind of work our way down. We're going to kind of get it ready to go, and it'll all depend on the demand. For instance, if we don't have any orders on a certain lateral, there's no sense to waste water to get water in that lateral if we're not going to have it for a week later or something. So we're going to try to direct it to the main stem and the high use laterals right off the bat, and then just kind of go from there.
We know how much water is generally used in the flushing?
We try to keep it controlled. Obviously, we can't go to capacity, so what I tend to do is get us in the operating mode of the minimums. So, for instance, say if the West Side Canal, like in your area, the max can get up to like 600 or 580 CFS. We won't put more than 300 in the canal because we don't have, 8 backhoes running around that we could trail that water down. So we kind of have to move it in sequence as we go down the system. So, and not, of course, not all of that 300 is flushed water. You may only look at 20 CFS, maybe 10 CFS for a few hours. So it's not completely spilled back into the system. A lot of it just going to be eaten up in the system because it's dry. So immediately once we pass certain areas, we'll be checking it up and slowing it down. So we kind of control it in that way, but we definitely don't go full capacity until those things are actually flushed out because we'll just have a mess everywhere.
Oh,
I would add to that that a lot of the flush water that James will kick back to the river is picked up downstream and charged to EP1 or Mexico. So it isn't like it's a loss to the system.
Oh, good, okay. Thank you all.
I was just gonna see, have we been doing, I see it says Hatch in central area, we're not gonna go to Hatch this year, or we've been going to Hatch?
We went to Hatch last year, we had one grower at the meeting, and we were not able to obtain a place. Because they're remodeling the community center, the school was not available, the city council or village council was not available, so. We're just doing one meeting here,
So the one guy's going to travel.
or joining virtually. And I do have one question, the virtual meeting available, is that a link that's gonna be at the email?
There, yes.
Okay, I was gonna say, we need to
Yes,
state
sir.
it, even if it's not, so somebody can figure out how to get on there. That's great.
Is that
Yes,
about
sir.
right?
There'll be a link on there.
I should say two growers showed up, Randy was there.
I was the one. Well, I just don't want anybody feeling like getting left out, so.
What we'll do to kind of help that out, just to give you an idea of what we've done in the past is I load up my ditch riders and of course supervisors up there with handouts. So they will attempt to get to the, to all the farmers that they can, that they see along as they're burning and doing stuff like that, so that we can at least get the word out that way of others who don't maybe receive an email. And just kind of let them know that there's other options in case, they can't get down here. They have that link that they could jump on. But we'll do our best to get those notifications out by hand as well, just by farmers that we run into out there.
Maybe we should do the pepper pot.
Very good. Any further questions for Dr. King or Mr. Narvaez? Very good. Then we will move on to the staff reports.
Thank you all.
First, thank you, Dr. King. Thank you, Mr. Narvaez. Potential approval of amendment 1 to the MOU with Biosoil and Water Conservation District, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President, you have in your packet the amended MOU. Recall you approved this in February. And the bio took it to their insurer. Their insurer had specific language that they wanted in the MOU, which is the red line under section 2. I'm asking the board to approve the amended MOU so that Caballo can obtain insurance policy.
Director Dottie.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Was there any language taken out, or is it just the red line that was added?
Just the addition of that.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Director. Are there any further questions from the board? What is the will of the board?
Move to approve.
I have a motion on the floor by Director Glacial to approve, seconded by Director Colquitt. Any further discussion? If that discussion is closed, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say no. It is the opinion of the president that the ayes have it and the motion carries. The MOU is amended.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, general and administrative, Mr. Francis.
Everybody see this okay? I need to know a little bit. So same story, cash is moving up. We actually are looking pretty good. I assume we'll land somewhere at the end of the year between 4 to 6 million in reserves. A lot of that's due to reimbursement from salaries and wages, getting some money back from some of these grants that I'll talk about here in a second. Our investment account is healthy. Our cash balance is a little bit larger than it typically is, and that's mostly due to some of these reimbursements going out. We got to pull cash in over the month. So I want to talk about some of the stuff that I'm about to get into. Go ahead, Mr. Gavier.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Francois. I didn't understand at the end of the year, our reserve should be 4 to 6 million, I believe is what you said. So I don't understand what that means, because that's not.
So this is our cash value and it's pretty much locked in place. This is the cash we have to spend throughout the rest of the year.
Yep.
And so paying salaries and wages and expenses that'll float the rest of the year. After this is paid down, we'll land somewhere in that 4 to 6 million range.
Understood. Do you know where that number is year over year?
I believe, let me pull you some reports so I don't misspeak. I think this year will be on par or slightly less than last year, but we're doing more spending this year.
Thank you very much. And I'm not requesting that report. I
Okay.
appreciate it very much, Mr. Joy, and I will note that I'd like to start this report. That, as usual, our cash is increasing. That's the water's not increasing, at least the cash is. Thank you, Mr. President.
And it's, from my perspective, kind of managing the cash flows of the district, it's important to note that although we do have these reserves increasing, there's an intention and a purpose behind that. Eventually, I guess you could say that money is reserved for structural improvements and improvements for the district. So although it's not being spent now, it will be spent in the future. I don't believe there was very much spend there historically. I could go back and look. I'm just going to say there wasn't. But we're kind of building these more so strategic reserves, not just, hey, we have cash in case, something crazy happens. It's, hey, we need to put cash aside because we have large infrastructure projects to do. We need to knock a large portion of those all out at once, and you need cash to do that up front.
Thank you, Mr. President. Assuming I'm remembering correctly, some historical context to that. When the district was selling excess pool water to our members, the district was gaining cash. There were limited amounts of time during the season to do improvements because the system was full of water for 9-10 months a year. When we moved into the drought and we started trying to do improvements to increase the amount of water we could get to our members and to not be increasing assessments in a drought, we depleted those cash reserves. We depleted the depreciation of our equipment. We did several things there. I do think it is important to have enough cash reserve to have operational flexibility so that you can, that you're not making operational decisions based on the amount of cash you have in your hand. You're making operational decisions based on the maximization of benefits to our members. That said, I appreciate Mr. Franzoi's sentiment that the intention is not to grow cash reserves. The best thing we can do with our members' money that they send to us for assessments is to spend it on improving their assets. It is not to hoard it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Director Duffy.
So interest rates, I believe they're up slightly from last month. Not very minimal, maybe like, 20 bips. And then we have 91% of our assessments received to date. I know there's some things I need to go over with the budget committee. Likely we'll meet next month. Probably towards the end of the month, I'll go over kind of what our attrition rate is and everything on these assessments received to date. I'll get into a presentation on some of these grant reimbursements that we're talking about. And so on the Weary grant payments, this was the Weary Ag War program. I think we have one last check for like 16,000. Other than that, we're all paid out. So all of those constituents got paid out. I'm about to go over that in a presentation. And then we're waiting reimbursement. It says ISC equipment purchases only. I believe there is some special appropriations in there, which is salary and wages reimbursement for the dedicated crews doing the work on that. So I'll reword that in a future presentation to be clear, break it out between capital appropriations and special. Other than that, we're healthy. I think the district, if you look around, is, taking huge strides. I mean, all of our equipment, we got all the equipment, we got all the vehicles, everything we need to get the work done. Now we're starting to get the work done. And so everything's kind of going as planned. Since when I started, our turnover is low. We're actually growing. We have capacity coming forward, which I'll talk about in a second, to potentially grow even more as needed.
But all good things for the district. So if there's no more questions, I'll go ahead and get into these presentations.
Director Dunn. Mr. President, thank you. I appreciate your indulgence. I appreciate the good news. Appreciate the good news. I appreciate how we continue to move our district towards being a world-class entity, an example of what reclamation districts can be. It's been a long time since we've had cash. And so I haven't had to think about this. In my own operation, probably in much of my computer's operations, I spend cash as rapidly as I possibly can. And when I run out of it, I go to the bank and I ask them for more. That's really typical in how we manage cash. It's not a simple answer for a public entity. We can't simply run on a line of credit. I can't simply restructure our debt when we need more cash. But I suspect there are some options other than being our own bank.
Right.
And just needing a giant pile of cash to be our own bank. Mr. President, I would ask that the finance committee, we're probably to the point that the finance committee could help to inform us on how we should be structuring cash and debt to ensure we have sufficient operational capacity, operational flexibility, this discussed earlier, and that we are being as efficient as possible with our members' cash. Because if they're not sending it to us, they can use it to spend on their own operations.
Okay. Happy to show the efficiency and what's planned for cash. I think that's great. In terms of debt, we are not allowed to take any on. I tried to pursue those pathways to take on debt. We'd actually have to take a vote for all the constituents in the district to pass for us to have the ability to take on debt. So that's something important to note, and it would be helpful if we could, but we can't. So unless we want to kind of take that to a vote and give us that ability.
Thank you. I would ask that we consider it not a can't, but that it requires approval of the members.
Yeah.
And then that may be the answer, Mr. President, is that we go to the members and say, do you want to send us cash or do you want us to incur debt on your behalf?
Mr. President, if I can. So the way I look at our cash is leverage. We can't borrow money, but we can acquire funding from state and federal sources that require matching funds that multiplies the amount of cash that we have on hand. In some instances, tenfold. So that's kind of the idea, is as we go forward, strategically, we're going to apply for those funds and leverage that money so that it finds a lot more money for our funds.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, Mr. President. And I appreciate that. I want to be clear. I'm not criticizing the cash we have. It's like a new day. I've not experienced this at the district. I think there are opportunities that expression of the opportunities you're seeking with cash. I would ask the finance committee come to us with new ideas because it's different than it used to be. And where is it that we need to provide guidance to support? Thank you very much for the indulgence, Mr. President. Thank you for your concerns, Director.
Any other questions? Okay.
To you, Mr. President.
I'm gonna switch over here. So this is gonna be some external funding sources that we have here. Let me figure out how to pin this back up. I thought there was a way to hide it here, maybe. Okay, so this is a presentation. I'm going to start off with kind of where we're at with our external funding from the Interstate Stream Commission. So for our capital appropriations, we're about 5.4 million out of the 8.7 million that was awarded to us. We're going to have a team meeting next week. Our objective is to spend down all this money before the year's over, calendar year. which I think we'll do. We might even try to target fiscal year, but after that team meeting, we'll see where we're landing. A lot of this equipment is coming in, some of it this week. And so the actual numbers kind of understated, but some's on order. We're continuously purchasing down on there. And then, so this is what you can see. We do have a lot of this paid for. Some of this is on order, like I said, coming here to the district, and until it's delivered, we don't pay on it. So some of those check boxes on the very left will be checked here in the near future. But you can kind of see here was what we estimated right here for what we were going to pay. Here's what we actually paid or think we're going to pay. Here's the difference in that. I have our variance in a percentage. And then these show, okay, here's what we actually paid year to date. Here was what we received for reimbursements thus far. And here's what we're outstanding for in reimbursement. And so you can see that as of this report, which was March 31st, we're outstanding for $651,000 in capital reimbursement, but they work very well with us. They should issue us that cash pretty quick. If there's no questions on this, I'm going to keep moving forward because.
Mr. President, so on line 3, just I've got trying to understand what this is telling me. On line 3, I have 300K estimated, 432K total. And I don't understand the difference then.
That might be an error here. I'll go look at that and fix that.
Okay.
I agree with you. I see that difference there. I don't know if I have the signs flipped or something, but I'll fix that one.
Okay.
It looks like it's correct all the way down except for that one.
Cash director.
So it might be linking to the wrong cell in that formula. Are you good there?
Yeah, that was it. So it's and I appreciate you highlighting. It's probably just an error in that one line. Thank you.
So special appropriations. So this consists of some things outside of capital appropriations, which are some equipment, things like that. For instance, the automated fuel system that we got for our yards to start tracking on grants comes out of this money. And then it's the salaries and wages for the dedicated crew that is doing the work, which I'll show you kind of what that work looks like. I just kind of wanted to show you where our spending is year to date. We do have salaries and wages for these dedicated individuals for 4 years. And so this will be drawn down over 4 years, although the capital that I showed you before will be spent this year.
Is all of that special appropriation funding from ISC, Mr. Franzo?
Yes, all of this is from ISC, both special and capital. And so you can see here is what we have listed for our special appropriations. Some of this is going to be some modeling. Some of it is the dam crew salaries and wages, drain crew salaries and wages, and then some one-off things that aren't considered capital appropriation. We good here? So we started work at the Lucero Dam. This is a presentation I gave to the Interstate Stream Commission for our quarterly report. I want to just walk through some of the equipment hours and progress that's kind of for the sites. I won't divulge too much time in. This is one of our flood control dams that we're kind of taking all the sediment out, kind of relaying the floodplain and the water getting directed into the flood control dam. And so thus far, we've removed about 130,000 cubic yards of sediment. I got some interesting pictures and stuff for you guys. These don't matter too much. These are kind of our milestones, but I kind of wanted to highlight that we have an app. Our guys are on site every day logging into this app. We're putting the work orders in, and we can kind of measure our progress, whether we're completed, ongoing, or not started, and we can open and close projects. And so we do have a plan and agenda and priorities. I think that's a huge shift forward for the district. And so this is some imagery from our LiDAR drone. So in the before picture on the left-hand side, you can see all the sediment, debris, vegetation that's in the dam. And on the right-hand picture, it's not technically the after picture because we're still performing some work, but you can see everything that was removed out of there. And so a lot of progress has been made. And then in this next one,
Can you please highlight some of the areas that you're talking about?
so kind of here in this entire flood pooling area, whatever you call it, I'm not an engineer. You can see kind of what we look like before and then what we look like after.
That's predominantly salt cedar.
And, Mr. President, is that the outfall channel at the bottom right?
Yes.
Thank you.
And so here's another kind of aerial view of kind of what that looks like. You can see that a lot of work has been performed there. And then I want to show you guys this video here, which will highlight kind of some of this before and after. It was weird when it was quiet.
Those pieces of equipment, ISC funded?
All of the equipment on this site is ISC funded.
Thank you.
And so, as you can see, kind of the channel coming into the pooling area of the dam, a lot of the sediment was used to reshape that channel. And so you kind of see that right here. So in terms of disposing of sediment, hey, we can use that sediment smarter if we don't have disposal sites nearby, and let's reshape this channel so that we can get the water into the pooling area of the dam. So I just wanted to highlight that too. And I have tons of other videos and pictures if you guys are curious to see that. We do have, I believe there's 27 of these dams slotted. I realistically think it's going to turn out to be about 24. We'll kind of see what happens, but this is one out of, the 27. And so we have two categories, and it's an important distinction. We have our category A, which is what's being performed right now, and that's removing sediment, doing the improvements we can without, approval of Dam Safety Bureau and engineers going out and making sure that what work needs to be done, major construction events. And so we plan, hopefully by the end of next year, to do, all of this category A type of improvements for all 27 dams. And so the work being done here, I'm sorry?
By when?
By probably the end of next year. It's pretty good. They are moving a lot of material, and when you have the right equipment, you can get the work done,
Pretty big dirt pile, 130,000 yards.
That is a lot of dirt, but when you got, some D6 dozers and some articulating dump trucks, it sure makes it a lot easier. So
You burn that saw cedar if you pile it up, don't you?
So what Casey did, to my understanding, was he'll bury it, kind of right here. I believe a lot of it was buried, and I think some of it was burned, but I'm not entirely sure on that. And so moving on, so that's one portion of the funding. We have our dedicated dam crew. We also have our dedicated drain crews. And so we have set a priority of 5 drains in north, south, and central. And we are starting work on cleaning these drains. These crews are not to affect our maintenance, go ahead, John.
Let me ask one more question. Where's the Lucero Dam? I don't know.
Right by the Blue Moon Bar, right there off Doniana Road,
Radium Springs.
Leesburg Dam. So now we have our drain crews also working simultaneously. And so in the Rincon drain, we've completed about 25,000 feet of drain. And you can kind of see some before and after pictures. We'll work to get these a little bit lined up precisely with our drone so that you get a really clear picture of what's before and what's after. But this is just kind of our first iteration. We're undergoing a lot of this reporting process. And so you can see that a lot of work's being done. It's good for the district. We want to do a lot more of this outside of just this dedicated crew. And so we're getting the equipment, and we have the equipment necessary to really push to clean up our facilities. And so the app that I mentioned, where they log in every day and periodically, point by point, you can see kind of the stretch of the entire drain that we've cleaned thus far. So this red line indicates how much of the drain that we've cleaned year to date for this project.
Does that drain run water?
I'm not entirely sure, but the purpose of the funding is to get all the drains restored to normal operating conditions. And so probably, I think this one does, some of them don't, but
This
the
one
water
does
table
have-
is low.
It does, sorry,
Go ahead.
it does have some flood control or flood waters that do go in there later because they do get a lot of monsoon in that particular drain. So it does, and it does have water in there because of the water table's really, really high there. So keeping those things clean helps us to move that water out. So it's not bogging down, especially in that lower area.
Thanks, James. Also with some of these other projects I'm going to showcase here, you'll start to see how we can start doing aquifer recharge. So James mentioned, okay, we have a stormwater event. Well, instead of sending this down the river, down to Texas, can we open it up, put it in these drains and promote aquifer recharge in the district? And so that's going to be a huge priority for the district going forward. I'll talk about some of these proposals here in a second that we applied for. But just wanted to kind of run through these really quick. So the park drain is another drain that we've worked on. We've done about 7,500 feet here. You can kind of see the before and after. Again, these don't line up one for one, but we will fix those images later to make sure they're consistent and they don't look like two separate projects. But, you know, a lot of work's being done. They're doing a great job out there. You can see that we've cleaned quite a bit. I think they're about to move on from these drains here pretty soon and kind of start the next drains on the priority list. The last one, the west drain, we've done about 11,500 feet. And you can kind of see some before and after reshaping. You can see that we're, you know, putting the drain back to its normal conditions. And looks good. So quite a bit of distance cleaned here. I do have an overall GIS map that has all the points, so I can provide that to you guys. But I think this is a huge step forward. So big thanks to ISC for helping us out with this, and it's going to be making massive improvements in our district. Next, I want to talk about some funding that was somewhat announced. It's almost here to my knowledge. We'll see kind of where that goes. But it's 11.5 million we have coming. It's IRA funding, but it'll be routed through the Interstate Stream Commission. And here's the projects that we have selected, and we'll pipe all of these laterals here. And so I can get you guys some GIS maps if you want to see where these projects are going to be. This might be rescoped potentially, but here was what was originally proposed. And I just wanted to show you guys that we have some automation. We have our wages and materials being reimbursed, and then there's going to be about 2 excavators with grade control to really lay this pipe in.
Mr. President, the Louisiana there, is that the entire Louisiana pipe?
No, it is not. It is, there's 3 phases to that project, to my recollection, and it is phase 1 of that project. The idea was to potentially do the entire thing, but as some of these other projects are really small, and it's good to just get them knocked out and done to where we don't have to go out there for maintenance on a very small stretch. So we wanted to get more of those done in problematic areas for the district, and then as much as the Louisiana as we could.
Thank you. My recollection is that there's a new lift pump on the Louisiana. Are we piping from the lift pump upstream?
I'm not sure yet. I think once we enter into this design phase, I can give you better answers.
I appreciate that. I would mention that has been a win for the operational efficiency of our district, is to pipe the laterals from lift pumps upstream.
So here is our estimated timeline to get these pipeline projects completed. We'll kind of use this to kind of track how we're doing. I believe it's 9:30 is the end of the funding period, so we're right there. But I did leave wiggle room for our guys to ensure that we get these projects done timely. I wanted to also mention the Weary Ag Work grants. On the very left column, you'll see that our partners have used a total award of about $550,000. And then their total project cost is about $800,000. And if you look at that percentage there, you know, us going out, me applying for these farmers or ranchers and getting them the funding, we've paid about 70% of their projects for improvements to their irrigation systems or farming practices. And so this is a big win. I know that Director Davier messaged out to you guys about my message to him, which is, hey, this is reopening. I believe it's going to be around 10 million. So if you guys have constituents or are interested in applying for this, please reach out to me. I can get you guys more information. I don't have all the information and deadlines as of now, but you know, a lot of people came to me after the fact and were like, hey, can I get some of that? I got these projects. Of course, it was after the deadline, but now that they're reissuing this, you know, if you got a farm you want to convert to drip, or you want to tie some wells together and improve irrigation, delivery efficiency or something on your farm, reach out. We can try to get you applied and get this money to you. So a lot of, if you want even sensors on your farm, whatever, put some sprinklers up, let me know. Because this is something I can do to help you potentially get more money to get a project done. Because as you guys know, it's not cheap and sometimes you don't have the cash to invest in that. But if, showing here, I can get that paid 70% down for you, it's pretty doable. And so I would encourage you guys to reach out to members of your precincts and, encourage them to apply here. Save a lot of money.
Mr. Frenzel, did you send out notice of this through the mass email?
Not yet. I will. However, we don't have all the information yet about how the program is going to roll out, what the application looks like, the dates or anything. As soon as they get that to me, I'm happy to do that.
Good, thank you. Mr. Smith?
One thing I'd like to note is this funding is great for our farmers. There is no admin associated with it. So all of the work that Joe did preparing those applications for our partners, the district covered. And we've expressed to WRI and NMDA that they need to include an admin portion to cover the costs for the fiduciaries. Because there are a lot of governmental entities that are filing these, they're eating costs for fiduciaries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
I believe the last application I submitted, I got a call 15 minutes before the deadline and I got it done in 15 minutes. And that's the budget, all the paperwork, but having done 3 of them or 4 of them before that, it was pretty easy to do. But it just goes to show, and that application was successful, so I can crank these out pretty quick. The work's pretty minimal. I do all the reporting on behalf of these individuals, and pretty much all they got to do is install it, and we cut them a check or hire contractors to install it. And so, it's your project, your work. Let me just get you the money and do all the reporting for you. So happy to do so. Happy to help farmers in our district. Any questions on these? Okay. So some additional grants that we're working on. We have our Rincon lateral piping project phases 2 and 3. We've got about $1.5 million in equip. We have that. It's awarded. I'm trying to find some matching funds. I'm applying for some private institutional funding to kind of make up for that because there is a kind of cost match component in that. I don't want the district to pay for that. Obviously, we have the cash pay for it. These are the types of projects that we discussed that, hey, if we can pay $500,000 of the district's capital to get this project done, then we'll do that. But I like going out and getting everything paid for. And so obviously our cash is pretty tight. There is a lot of structural improvements that we got to make throughout the district. And so for projects like this, I don't want to put that burden on the farmers. I want to use, state and federal funds and potentially even a segment I'm going into private institutions and get these projects funded. Another piece of funding that we have is the phase 1 of the Rincon. So that's $900K. That's been awarded. We are in SHPO compliance right now. Hopefully we can pass through that and then we can get that project done. If another project that's going to be coming up, which is the Rincon Arroyo project, is awarded, all of this 2, 3, and phase 1 will tie into that project and we'll just knock out the entire project at once. Then we got our ICIP funding for $580K. Is that right? Is that the number?
Yep.
$580K. That'll be used to redo our Robledo repeater tower, which is where all our telemetry and SCADA data comes in. And then there'll be some, signage and stuff like that. And we're going to explore some options for some other potential capital outlay there. So these are some projects I submitted. You can look at these budgets. This is about $5 million for the Rincon Arroyo. I don't think you really need to focus on kind of what I have budgeted for here, but I want to go over what these projects were. So this is for the DRE IRA money. It was that kind of 60 million that was talked about. It got carved down to 19 million, I believe, in total applications. There was 30 million and we applied for about 14 and a half of the 30 million. And so here's the Rincon Arroyo project. We have some pipeline there. So this red is kind of the pipeline there. This is gonna be a habitat where we widen the drain, which is efficient for kind of water delivery, but we bench it out and we plant kind of vegetation in there, so cottonwood, stuff like that, that counts as habitat. Habitat is a requirement for this funding, and so we have to be creative in how we do that. I'll get into some of these other components because I can zoom in kind of here in the next slide. But, you know, promoting, the idea of this project is to slow down the upper watershed. This arroyo can flow at, you know, 2,000 plus CFS. It almost carved through down here. What would you call that? Yeah, the IBWC levee, and pretty much breached or almost flooded the farmers. And so, you know, it is an area of concern for not only us, but other people in the district. We also get tons of sediment coming into the river there, tons of sediment coming into our facilities there. And so the idea is to slow that water down, build 3 ponding areas where you can capture the water in those ponding areas, promote aquifer recharge, pipe that down our drain, do aquifer recharge all the way down, and then we have another habitat facility. And so we did get letters of support from everybody on this project for if it's their property. So IBWC, we got Joe Paul Lack, we got Bill Porter. And so they're going to be great partners in helping us make sure this project happens. And so kind of zooming in here, we have our 3-tier kind of ponding area. The first tier is where we'll capture kind of all the sediment and trash. It'll have a weir between it that'll flow into the habitat section and then to the last section. And so we should have clean water filtered and then going into our drain and back to the river. And then we're slowing down the water here. So we have kind of a cut that will spread the water because, as you can imagine, you know, 2,500 CFS coming down here, it's like a pressure washer. If we can, you know, really spread that water there, we should kind of decrease the velocity by a lot. We do have some numbers that we did in our QAS. I believe it was like a 85% reduction in kind of water velocity. And so this project is very good. And then kind of here's the proposed habitat. Here's some renderings. These are initial kind of plans for that. Just wanted you guys to be aware. So here's our 3-tier ponding. Habitat will be in the middle there. We'll work with IBWC on their habitat requirements and, you know, help them do some habitat there as well. Moving on. Oh, and then there's some existing habitat that Joe Paul Lack has down there that he's already, you know, pretty much gave to the district for projects, but we'll be rehabilitating that habitat and doing some work there. So that's one of our submissions. The other, is there any questions? Sorry, this is a lot. Okay. So these are automation projects. It's going to be using Rubicon gates and automating all of our canal structures. And so by switching to Rubicon gates, we'll have a margin of error of about 2.5% versus where we're at now. Who knows? That's somewhere greater than 15%. And so the idea is that we can automate various check structures throughout the district. And so if we have 300 CFS coming down right here, okay, and you open your turnout and you take 60 CFS down your ditch or lateral, then it'll open the gates up more here so that we can keep the canal charged and be super efficient with our water. And this is all kind of, the system talks to each other, so it's all remote and automated. And also, as we talked about kind of flushing out the sediment, what we have right now is we have these radial gates and the sediment floats on top, all these tumbleweeds and stuff. And so these are tipping gates. And so it'll allow the sediment to pass through, hopefully, and or debris, tumbleweeds, and then we can collect it at kind of one site.
So they're overshot gates.
I believe they call them tipping gates, but it could be overshot. And so there'll be a lot of, you know, RTUs and automation there. We're also proposing rehabilitating the Mesilla Dam, automating those gates. So we'll probably automate, I believe it's gates 1 and 2 and 10 and 12, or the last 2 on each side. And so that'll allow automation and flows of the Mesilla Dam to help us control water. Yes, sir.
How resistant are these systems to theft and vandalism?
Very resistant.
Good.
You know, obviously that's going to be an issue, and that's an issue you got to deal with, but you know, they got pretty good safety boxes and stuff like that. Luckily, the stuff that would be vandalized is very cheap in comparison to the gate and the rest of the structure. I don't think they're going to go and try to lift and hoist out and unbolt the gate out of a check structure, right? So I guess we'll see as that goes on, but the RTU units and the telemetry stuff is about 3,000 per site, so it's not a detrimental cost to the district if that does get vandalized. And then just being kind of in the remote areas, I don't think it should be too big of an issue either.
They're surrounded by idiots.
Yeah.
Mr. Rubio.
If I may add, just recently we redesigned some security boxes that go around our RTU units existing. Prototype is done, it's already installed, it's doing good so far, it's been there about 3 weeks. At one of our most popular sites, so if that proves to work well, we'll place those on new telemetry.
Let us hope.
Very good. Let's keep moving. We're getting behind on our.
Sorry. And so I'll just do high level. So we're pretty much automating here from the Leesburg Dam all the way to, which way is this, Alex? 8?
Yeah.
And so we're automating this entire stretch. So this yellow line is our automation. And then all of these little blue lines are laterals that will have gates. Laterals are drains that will have automatic gates. In terms of storing events, if you have 300 CFS, you got 200 CFS of storming event, we can put that 200 CFS in drains and do aquifer recharge and kind of flush sediment out of our system back to the river. And here's some of the habitat at the Leesburg. These are very preliminary conceptual designs. And then the next project is pretty much the Mesilla all the way down to Chamberino, and it's automating all the laterals, drains, and check structures throughout that entire reach.
That's the west side all the way down to Chamberlain, right?
Yes, the west side. And then the retrofit of the Mesilla Dam there as well. We'll be automating those motors. It's all manual now, and potentially some blockhouse improvements as well. So huge project, should save tons of water. And I mean, it's going to be tens of thousands of acre feet potentially of water. It'll be saved just due to efficiency and operations there. So probably 10, 20,000 acre feet a year. Obviously, it's less on shorter irrigation years like we have this year, but you know, if we can get to somewhat normal operating conditions, it should help out a lot.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Francois.
Yep.
Very informative.
Congratulate Mr. Smith, Mr. Franzo, finding this money.
Well, we haven't got that yet, but we'll know in July for this.
Takes a lot of paperwork to do this, make everybody happy. Not underestimated.
Mr. President, I want to mention for our members who are listening and interested. One of the principal things that our members should realize with this that they should receive from all this automation work is an increasing capacity of our system, which will increase their ability to receive water when they demand it. I am very hopeful for the promise of these systems. Thank you, Mr. President.
One thing to add that I didn't say, and I want to make sure I say this, is that this is at no cost to the farmers of the district. This is all fully funded through the IRA. It doesn't impact your assessment or anything at all, but it helps you guys get more water and achieve more efficiency.
Need to put that on the website.
Yeah.
Anybody's relevant.
They need to know it.
Any further questions, Brandon? Next time on the agenda is the manager's update. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since our last board meeting, we have been busy dealing with our Texas versus New Mexico settlement implementation and all of these funding applications that have come due at roughly the same time. Luckily, Mr. Franzoy gave you a lot of good news because I had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago and have a little bad news. If you'll recall, we were slated for an award of $30 million from the FSA through the Credit Commodity Corporation. And I met with the FSA Associate Administrator, and he would not outright say that that money is dead and gone, but that money is gone. And we no longer need to waste any time praying, hoping, or wishing that we're going to receive that funding. So we had somewhere around 25 projects slated under that funding. A big portion of it was supposed to pass through farmers, so it's unfortunate that that's not gonna happen. But we're looking at some other funding opportunities to make up that difference. I did have good meetings with the EPA for actual farmers. I did not realize that the state revolving loan fund can finance ag BMP best management practices. I have a lot more information on that. We'll provide that to you later on, but it's something that I think could be a benefit to our farmers, and it's something that we need to take a look at. As Joe said, we did get $580,000 in capital outlay this year. Some of that money was double funded for some of our projects, so we are going to look at how we can best apply that. Luckily, our legislators are very gracious, and most of them have no problem with us pivoting and putting that in some other pot that we need money. I do want to thank Sky. Sky got thank you cards ready to go to all of those legislators. They've been signed and sent, and we want it on the record how grateful we are to all the legislators that provided us capital outlay. I think in the next few months we will be exploring having a tour, showing them where those funds are going to actually be applied. So we had a government affairs committee meeting. We do not have a government affairs committee report, so as part of my report, I would have that Sky provide us any information she's got for us. She's with us.
Yes, thank you, Director and Mr. President and members of the board. For the Government Affairs Committee, we have been working still on figuring out what we should be presenting in the interim. And we have also flagged a time-sensitive issue about the Water Quality Commission rulemaking. They are going through a process right now where they are implementing Senate Bill 21 from the 2025 legislative session, which basically gives primacy for surface water regulation to the Environment Department. And initially, agricultural uses were exempted in the bill. However, the Water Quality Control Board is making an effort to include uses through rulemaking. And so I had put together a big packet on the issue and sent over to the Government Affairs Committee, which then believed that the right place for this might be the Legal Committee. The problem is that the deadline for filing a notice of intent for direct technical testimony is April 15th at 5 p.m. We also have the option of submitting a public comment letter if we cannot get everything ready, but it is strongly recommended that the Legal Review Committee take a look at that and see if we should file a notice of intent. And so that is the question that I would like for the full board to consider at this time. And that would conclude my report, and I will stand for questions with myself relying heavily on Mr. Smith as he is an attorney.
Thank you, Sky. Just for the board's information, Pete and DL and I met with Martin GCD, CID, and Big Valley Artesian District. Talk about the surface water quality issue. We'll talk about that during the whole session. And I believe that's all I have. If you all have any questions, I'd be to answer them.
Questions for Mr. Smith? Very good. Moving on to calendar of events.
We have a very full calendar over the next month or so. Next April 16th, the Bureau of Reclamation Army Corps of Engineer annual operating meeting at 1:30 at the DOR office in Albuquerque. We will be traveling up the morning of the 16th to attend that meeting, and then continuing on to Santa Fe for the Rio Grande Compact Commission meeting. There's a reception the evening of the 16th. The meeting is the morning of the 17th, and then we will be returning the afternoon of the 17th. And travel has been approved for those two meetings. The following week, April 20th through the 22nd, is the Water Leaders Workshop in Ruidoso. We will be traveling up the morning of the 20th. I believe that meeting starts at 11 o'clock, and we'll be returning the afternoon of the 22nd. The following week, the NWRA Federal Water Issues Conference is April 27th through the 29th. Myself, Joa, and President Roderosa will be attending that conference, and we're working on setting up meetings with our congressional delegation. So the growers meetings, as you've heard, will be on May 1st. We're going to meet here for the Hatch and Central area. As I said, unfortunately, we couldn't find a location in Hatch to hold it. American Ag Credit has agreed or has asked if they can provide food for both of these meetings, which we appreciate. And we will have a presentation from Joa. Similar to what you've seen today, we want to provide our growers with an update on all of the good things that we're doing. Ryan Serrano will be there to talk about their purchase program. The Soil and Water Conservation District will be there to talk about their cover cropping program. And we'll just provide a general district update. The Friday, May 1st date, I hope Dr. King works better for you than having to come down the 1st and the 4th. So we will be here at 8 a.m. Friday the 1st, and then moving down south to the Anthony Country Club at 1 o'clock that afternoon. Following our growers meetings, we have the New Mexico Watershed Dam Owners Coalition Spring Conference in Albuquerque. That's May 6th through the 8th. I believe we are requesting travel for 4 staff members for that trip, and that has not yet been approved, so we'll need to cover that momentarily. I will be attending, Alex Rubio will be attending, Alex Montes with our dam and drain maintenance crews will be attending, and I think Casey is, but I believe Casey's being paid for by Caballo. So
Okay.
we're just asking for approval for up to 4 staff members. Then our next board meeting will be May 13th. And as we've discussed, the release date will be May 29th. That is the calendar. So, Mr. President, if you will address approval for the New Mexico Watershed Dam Owners Coalition.
I believe that is in the consent agenda.
Oh, it is. Perfect. That's our calendar.
Questions for Mr. Smith? Moving on to the HR and safety update, Ms. Maciel.
Ms. Maziel is unavailable. She's in a training, so I will be covering that.
Mr. Smith.
We currently have 84 employees. Unfortunately, we received a 2-week notice from one of our ditch riders in the South region, so we're down to 83 2 weeks from now. We are in the process of hiring. Marty Lucero up front is retiring. Her effective retirement date will be July 3rd, 2026. So Marty has been here a long time, and we want to make sure that she knows we appreciate her many years of service to the district, and we will recognize her when the time comes. But we will be, unfortunately, hiring for that position. We are also in the process of hiring a finance specialist to assist Leah in the finance department with payroll and purchasing and take some of the workload off of her plate, because she is very hard for us right now. Working too many hours. And that is the HR and safety department report. If you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
Questions for Mr. Smith? Moving on to engineering and maintenance update, Mr. Rubio.
Sir, good morning, everybody. With engineering, we got everybody up to date on defensive driving this month. We had a few people that were overlapped. So we got them up to par. Scott and I attended a water irrigation master's training at NMSU. I attended a pump systems training as well. On top of that, we've been in coordination with the dam and drain crews. We've been doing all the LiDAR flights. We've been doing all the GIS mapping for the reporting that Joa just showed us this morning. We've been working tight with the field crews and with Joa. We toured the system, the project areas with Rubicon as well to do field surveys for all the structures that we will have to either refurbish or tear down and rebuild completely for the new gates, the new system. Some of those are just out of date. They're past their time. So we identified which structures those were, worked that into the estimates. We've been working tight with Joa to get the rest of the estimates for these projects. It was a tight turnaround. We had about 2 weeks to get everything turned out from top to bottom for all these projects with what we could. And again, just additional drone flights with the dam crews and the drain crews. Any questions for us?
Questions for the engineering team? Very good, thank you, Mr. Rubio. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Gamble. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. What is the will of the board?
Mr. President, I request to pull the AAA license request.
Very good, we will pull the AAA license. Any other requests to pull items from the consent agenda? With that, what is the will of the board?
I move to accept the consent agenda.
I have a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda by Director Sloan. Seconded by Director Garai. Any further comment? That discussion is closed. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. It is the opinion of the president that the ayes have it, and the consent agenda, with the exception of the AAA Farms license, is approved. The AAA Farms, Mr. Gamboa.
Yes, sir. So with this license here, it's to construct, operate, and maintain a buried 2-inch water line crossing the Rodriguez lateral. So this 2-inch line is going to be buried crossing the Rodriguez lateral to a farmhouse or barn, I guess you can say, that Mr. Aiken was using to farm his land. And that sums it up.
Mr. Donovan.
Thank you very much. So I want to be clear because you said two different things. Is it going to a house or is it going to a barn?
It's a barn.
Thank you very much. That's all the questions I have. Mr. President, I move to approve the license for AAA Farms.
Second. I have a motion on the floor to approve the license to AAA Farms, seconded by Mr. Davia, seconded by Director Colquitt. Any further discussion? That discussion is closed. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. It is the opinion of the president and the ayes have it, and the license is approved. Next, we have suspension and transfer hearing. Ms. Carlson. Okay, I call to order the board of directors. The board is convened to act upon. Call to order the board sitting to hear suspension and transfer applications. The board is convened to act upon applications by landowners in the district to transfer water rights pertinent to lands. Did I do that right, Mr. Lutz? Do I need to have a vote to go into?
I don't believe transfer. You need to vote. I believe you just announced that you're going into the suspension and transfer hearing.
Okay. Board is convened to act upon applications by landowners in the district to transfer water rights pertinent to lands within the district, which are not suitable for irrigation or capable of being properly irrigated to other lands within the district. These applications are filed under section 73-13-4 of the New Mexico statutes. The board will decide if, within their judgment, the other land within the district may be profitably or advantageously irrigated. The applicants are identified as listed on Exhibit A. The applicants were required to publish notice in any newspaper published within Diana County of EBID taking action to consider a resolution allowing the transfer. Publication should have listed the time and place of this meeting, listed the action to be taken by this board, listed a description of the move to and move from lands, and listed the reason for the requested transfer. Does staff have a copy of the notice of publication?
Yes, sir, we do.
Were all required points in the publication?
Yes, sir.
Was the last publication date made prior to this hearing?
Yes, sir, it was.
We will now proceed with presentation by staff. After that, the board members can ask questions of staff.
Good morning. Good morning. We have one water transfer this morning. It's 2026 WTS 003. Dwayne and Nancy Peralt is transferring one water righted acre to Salopix 6U Farms, Inc. If approved, the Peralts will no longer have water rights, and Salopix 6U Farms will have a new total of 160.52 water righted acres. Staff recommends approval.
Are there any questions by board members? At this point in time, the board will take evidence and testimony from the applicants or their representatives or any persons who are here to protest the applications. We will proceed with any presentation by the applicants. After that, the board members and EBID staff can ask questions of applicants. The applicants or their representatives introduce themselves. Do we have anyone online? Are there any protestants who wish to speak? So please identify yourself for the record. Are there any other comments? The chair will now entertain a motion to have a resolution to approve or disapprove the applications.
I make a motion to approve applications.
I have a motion on the floor by Director Colquitt to approve
Application or right transfer number 2026-WT-003. Is that it?
2026 S&T 04.
I'm sorry, it is 3.
Is 3.
Yes, sir.
Here we have 2026 S&T 04.
On my paper, I got 3, sir.
Okay.
It's not, yeah,
My old school.
Okay.
the resolution says 4.
Okay, we'll get it changed.
Mr.
Yes, sir.
President, as a point of order, the approval for the resolution.
Right. So,
I'll get that fixed. I'll amend
Mr.
it.
Lutz, what do we need to do? Just state the resolution as
amended.
okay. So I have a,
Mr. President, I believe the resolution is properly numbered on the agenda. The resolution, I believe, is also properly numbered in our packet.
If the application is 003, resolution says 004.
Yes. It is 4 on the resolution, and I will get that amended.
okay, so I have a motion on the floor by Director Colquitt to approve resolution 2026 S&T 03 to be amended, -04 to be amended.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay, I'm sorry. So the resolution 2026 S&T 004 is correct.
Okay.
I was,
Mr. President, point of clarification, I believe this is the third water transfer. This specific transfer is the third water transfer of the year.
right, no, I got that,
It is not the third month resolution, it's the 4th month resolution.
That's correct.
The numbering,
Yes,
the
sir.
resolution being different than the transfer. Like we had 10 transfers, they had numbered 3 through 3rd, okay, 12.
So there's no need to amend the title of the resolution. The title of the resolution is correct. So I have a motion on the floor by Director Colquitt to approve resolution 2026 S&T 04. Do I have a second? Second by Director Chris. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. It is the opinion of the president that the ayes have it and the resolution carries. I will ask that the resolution be formalized as called for by section 73-13-5 of the New Mexico statutes. And that the secretary of the board immediately certify and file with the state engineer a true copy of the resolution and action of the board. If there are any protestants who disagree with the action of the board, may appeal this decision directly to the district court as provided under section 73-13-4 of the New Mexico statutes. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the board, sitting to hear the applications.
I make a motion to adjourn the board.
I have a motion on the floor to adjourn the board, sitting to hear the applications by Director Cole. Seconded by Director Garai. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. It's the opinion of the presidents that the ayes have it and the board sitting to hear applications is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is all of the agenda for open session. Is there? The Director,
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would note that there was some confusion about the numbering in our suspension of transfer hearing. My recollection is historically we number every transfer. So that the individual transfers are numbered, and we can identify them. We have numbered the resolutions based on the month the resolution was passed. That may or may not be a best practice. It is a historic one. Given that there was some confusion, it might be reasonable to reconsider how we number those. That's all. Thank you, Mr. President.
thank you, Director. Anything else for open session? And with that, I will accept a motion to go into closed session.
I make a motion to go into closed session.
A motion on the floor by Director Colquitt to go into closed session, by Director Garai. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. We are in closed session.
I would like to make a motion to come out of closed session.
There's a motion on the floor from Director Colquitt to come out of closed session, seconded by Director Ludman. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. It is the opinion of the president that the ayes have it. We are in an open session. I will note for the record that the only matters discussed in closed session were the agenda closed session items, and that no action was taken. Is there anything else for open session? That I will accept a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn by Director Colquitt, seconded by Director Garai. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is the opinion of the president that the ayes have it and the meeting is adjourned. It is 12:45.